Welcome to the Living Your Career Show, everybody. My name is Roisin Duffy. I'm your host. The theme of today's show is now is the time to exercise your social muscles, to talk to strangers in expanding your career horizons. Have a look at the employment market. It's been turned upside down by COVID-19. Many industries, very secure industries, have been left devastated in its wake. Job growth is patchy. Opportunities do exist, but we need to seek them out in new and different ways. Now more than ever, we have to be creative, industrious, and we have to be active in our pursuits. And I think for job seekers and for job hunters out there, if you're struggling to shake off the dormancy of social isolation, now is the time to get social. And this means, according to our special guest today, Kerrie Phipps. Hi, Kerrie.
Hi, Roisin. So great to be here.
Absolutely. Great to have you. Kerrie says that personally and professionally, we need to develop our self-awareness and our clarity to confidently connect with people. And those are the people who pass you by every day in the street. Could be the people you work with in your, could be your close circle. It could be people you haven't spoken to for a long time. But now you need to exercise that social muscle and getting reconnected, because any one of those could be your next boss. They could be your mentor. They could be the person who inspires you and helps you in your career. So let me tell you a little bit about our special guest, Kerrie. Kerrie's an international speaker. She is a magazine writer. She's a prolific author. And I would call her a virtue. Now that I've done a lot of digging into her background, Kerrie, I would call you a virtuoso of human relations, somebody that touches people and creates lasting memories. Kerrie's the author of multiple books, and the one we'll be probably covering today is the Do Talk to Strangers, How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere. And Kerrie's mission is simple, and she lives it with every breath of her body. And that's to inspire a more connected, compassionate, and collaborative world. Her key message, confidently and earnestly, is to connect with others, to deepen inclusion and learning, and essentially to thrive in your life and in your work. Kerrie, thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experiences, which are vast today. I guess my question is, every person is different. Their circumstances are different. And some people have been really, and we were talking about this during the week, some people have been really dismayed and anxious about social isolation. Other people have rejoiced in having sort of time to work from home. But for job seekers right now and career seekers, they may need to shake off that dormancy of, I suppose, social isolation. What would be a good way for them to kickstart that effort?
That's a great question, and so important to start small and to recognize that everybody's in a different place, and to recognize that it's okay that you are in a different place to other people, because we so easily fall into the trap of comparison. And you've talked about, building our social muscles, and really they can be quite apparent. And underneath that is our mental muscles. So what's the conversation that we're having in our head about the world around us, about other people? Because our brain is so socially wired. Like 4/5 of our brain is at least socially wired. So we're on the lookout for, what do other people think? How are they perceiving me? And there's just an awareness. Even when you're driving in a car, you can feel somebody in the car next to you look at you. Our brain is on alert. Where do I fit in with the world? And so I think we are so much more aware of how we relate to people, or how we are shrinking back. And like any muscles, if we don't lose it, we don't lose it, that's the expression, but it atrophies. And one of my clients/friends in Sydney was telling me over the past year, she's lost several languages, because generally in her day-to-day work and traveling internationally, she would be speaking 7 languages a day, like in the one day. And she said, I've just kind of lost a couple of languages in the past year. And we know that she'll pick that up again. But she was sharing that in response to someone who's so beautifully extrovert and connects with everybody. And she was saying, I just don't want to leave the house anymore. I'm so happy just doing my Instagram thing and connecting with everybody online. But when I have to be in a room with people, it's like, what do we do now? Do we shake hands? Do we do the awkward elbow bump? Or do we just go, can I give you a hug? There's so much to navigate. So I think the thing that we have to really be aware of is what is going on up here. Are we putting pressure on ourselves? Because that will get in the way of a good quality conversation. That makes us put on our masks up and try and look professional, look like we have it all together. And that's exhausting. I don't know if you've spent much time living like that, but I used to live like that. And until I was actually so sick that I didn't have any energy to have a mask up, I've realized that it's just so liberating to be me. And it's me that connects with people, not a facade that I think they want. And so when we're wanting to connect in a professional way, we hear people talking about bringing your whole self to work, and we think, I don't want to do that because people won't like my whole self. What does that actually mean? But if we can focus on what lights us up, what is it that connects us with other people? And it's often little things, but little things that put a smile on your face and on other people's faces.
I think that bring your whole self to work. I think we all try to salvage a little piece of ourselves, so when we go home, we still have some brain space to spend time with our children and our partners and our family and our community. I mean, it's such a balancing act, isn't it? What for you, Kerrie, are the big shifts that people are going to have to make now in connecting in this world of work? What are the big shifts people are going to have to make in terms of connecting with people? Because we were saying a while ago, before we went on live, it's, people, you can't just expect jobs to drop into your lap. Your close circle will be influential, but they may not be enough. Now you're going to actually have to start thinking about how you're going to broaden your networks and your connections so that you can get your brand out there professionally. What for you would be the big shifts they're going to have to start making?
I think a massive shift for some people will actually be honesty with yourself, so that when you are getting out, and it's just taking small steps, but when you are real with yourself. So as you said before, we start with awareness and then small steps. If we start small, we can actually be practicing when we go to a cafe or when we're in the supermarket, just to make eye contact with somebody and smile, or say, wow, I love your bag, or something that is genuine. But I saw this in the cafe this morning, actually, genuine connections. I saw people coming in, looking a little, when somebody just really needs a coffee and just low energy. And I saw the way that the barista engaged. And it's just very everyday words like, what can I get for you? How are you? And the small engagements we take for granted, but that's what we can practice with. We can build our social muscles and our mental muscles in terms of honest, authentic connecting with people and sharing a moment of joy. Those give us confidence. When we have little wins, it builds confidence for, the bigger things that we take on. And I've recently been talking with somebody who was going for an officer selection board. So this is like a really serious job interview because it's in the military. You're going to be interviewed by officers who have enormous experience. And maybe you've seen them on Anzac Day. We're wearing all of their medals, and you go, they have seen some places and they, have incredible experience. And so we can feel absolutely terrified. So we were talking about how they can prepare for this officer selection board and talking about things like the future of the organisation that you want to engage with. What is it? Do the research. And Roisin, you did amazing research when you sent through what you were going to say about me. I was like, wow, I feel like you know me so well. And I've just connected with you days ago by someone's introduction. So research, do the research, understand what is the organisation and where are they headed. Because if you can talk about what you resonate with, that's going to put a smile on their face. That they're going to say, oh, you've prepared for this. But the ultimate thing then is to relax and be yourself, because we can feel it, can't we, when somebody is putting on the professional veneer and trying to hold it all together, trying to look really impressive. And you can naturally be impressive by doing the research that you did. That conveys a sense of you value this opportunity to have this conversation, or you value the interview, you value the organisation that you're engaging with by doing that research and talking to other people And maybe it's connecting with people on LinkedIn first of all and saying, have you been to one of these interviews? Would you be open to having a conversation about this? And, it's something that is quite simple, but often we don't think to ask for help.
Joe, since I started doing these podcasts, I've had New York University Dr. Christian Bush on, yourself, Kerrie. I've reached out to so many, and actually, in fact, so many people have things to say. And if you ask people for help, they will help you. But I sort of feel, it's this thing about valuing yourself as well as valuing the opportunity, as well as valuing others.
Yes.
Back yourself. Don't be afraid to sort of say, look, I'd love to have a chat with you about this. And you may not have time, but if I pop you a few questions, could you respond to them? I know your life is busy, but if I could call you, even better still, I won't take much of your time because time is precious to people right now.
Yes.
But just because time is precious and you might be flat tack yourself, always connect, always back yourself, always ask the question. People can only say no or ignore you. But really, if you're persuasive in what you have to say, the chances are that they're going to probably want to talk to you and help you.
Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about was getting fixated on a plan. And professionals in particular, this thing, I have my career goals, I have my milestones, I want to kind of keep going forward at least, even if I'm sort of, not fast forwarding, but at least keep going forward. And they have this plan, but the problem is then they get fixated on the plan. And I guess for you, then they don't engage very well when they do that. How do they balance planning with engagement, particularly for ambitious and aspiring people who want to move forward quickly?
Yeah, I think it's great to think about what it's like in the other shoes, like in the shoes of the person that you engage with, because some people can be really inspired by your ambition and your enthusiasm, but you might also sense that sometimes people are like, whoa, can we just lighten up a little bit? So have a think about the impact that our words and our energy might have. But when we know what our plan is, that's great. So we plan it and then we hold it lightly. It's like with that interview situation I mentioned before. Do the research, have the plan, see how you can fit into this organization, and then go in and be yourself and hold lightly, because anything that we're holding tight to, whether it's assumptions or judgments or expectations or plans, it gets us into a tense kind of sense of being. We don't engage well with people when we have that tension, and we can feel it coming when somebody's coming trying to sell us something, sell us an idea, or sell us a product or a service. We sense it, so we need to know that we could convey that to somebody also. And so have your plan, but just hold it lightly. And you can, it comes back to being honest again and saying, I'd really love to, engage with, or I'd really like to pick up more clients here, or I'd like to get a job here, and just be open to exploring. Because I think when we connect with one clear agenda, we actually are blinkered and we miss out on a whole lot of other things. Because we could meet somebody who might be a client, might be a new boss, might be a colleague, but if we go in there expecting them to be one particular thing, then we can shut them off immediately because they think, oh, I'm not that person. I'm not going to be that role. Does that make sense?
And I think also when you're in a relaxed state, you are yourself. You're more likable. You connect more easily. You're more relatable for people. I do a lot of interview coaching with people, and I always, I never do coaching the day before an interview. I never do coaching the morning of an interview, because those people can go out like a mechanical bull into an interview thinking that, I've got to follow Roisin's structure. And I always sort of say to people, play with these things, make them your own, but you're not going to do that if you're if you're doing all your prep the day before and you're going in there and you're fully charged. It's highly unlikely that you're going to sort of come out looking like a very relaxed, easy human being. You might be able to pull it on for that hour, but trust me, you probably crash afterwards. You need to ease yourself and be relaxed in these environments, because the likability factor is huge for getting jobs. One of the things we were talking about is, building your personal and professional relationships online. And more people are doing that. They're using LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all sorts. And I guess I'm just wondering, what does that mean? Is it time for people now to make more of a conscious effort to get out there and meet people face to face? Does it matter?
Well, I love a combination, and I think that we have incredible opportunities right now to connect with people all over the world who we might never ever meet face to face, but they might actually know somebody who's in your neighborhood. So those connections are really valuable. And let's take the local opportunities as well. So yesterday I met with somebody who reached out to me on LinkedIn. And the way that we connect, again, it's about noticing how are we connecting and how are other people connecting online so that we can feel like, how does that work for me? If somebody sends me an invitation in LinkedIn with it feels automated. I can pick up that it's like, especially if I've seen it from their colleagues in the weeks leading up to that, and I go, yep, I've seen it. Oh, this is not, an authentic connection. But somebody connected, she just thought that maybe she can learn from my posts, which makes me think I don't do enough.
Yeah.
But and I just went, oh, I'm in your area. Hey, do you want to meet up for coffee? And we did. And it was just incredible. And then we start connecting to each other people in our worlds. So, yeah, I think a mix is fantastic, and just start small. Take the pressure off yourself and just think, okay, what could be my goal this week? Do I want to connect with 3 new people, 5 new people? Some of them might be online, some might lead to a face-to-face, or they might be those moments in the supermarket or the cafe where you just think, I'm actually going to make eye contact. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to ask about something. I'm going to be curious. If we can be curious and engaged, that helps us to let go of agendas also.
One of the people that I coach, she did her architecture degree, and she was on the train to Brisbane for her job. She was just a little graduate in her first job, and she started a conversation with somebody who ended up being her boss.
Yeah.
In my experience, most people on the train, and I would say I'm probably one of them, I have a book, and normally if I'm on the train, I'm either studying or reading something. I use the train to optimize my time rather than driving to Brisbane or wherever I'm going. And, the last thing you want is to talk to somebody. But every now and again, it's that sort of thing about put it down, take stock, have a chat with somebody, because more often than not, you walk away from those conversations and they actually put you in a pretty good space for your day's work. And for me, I found that that happened to me on so many, and maybe it's because I'm Irish. I don't know. Talk to Roisin, because she's got that kind of, and you're the same. You've got your great grandfather was Irish. I'm not saying Irish, but some people, no matter what culture or nationality, have that sort of face that says, "Talk to me," because we enjoy people. We love that social diversity in those conversations.
Yeah. Now, when you said the last thing you want to do is talk to somebody in that moment, I totally relate to that. I remember one day I got to the airport early in Perth one morning. I'd been up in the Pilbara and working on a new book, and I was exhausted, and I just felt introverted. I just felt like I just can't talk to another person. And so when I was checking in, I said to the lady behind the counter, would it be okay if you see if I can get a seat by myself today? I said, I'm just really tired. And she said, oh, I totally understand. She said, sometimes I get in the taxi at the end of the day, and she's like, I just can't. I can't have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then, so she tried to organize that for me. She said she couldn't guarantee it. Well, just before takeoff, a young man came and sat next to me. And so I just said, good morning. I thought I would just sleep the whole trip back. He was tired also. I thought that he wouldn't chat. We talked the entire 5 hours, and it was incredible. And then we connected people to each other. I featured him and his friend in a blog series that I was doing about young achievers. And it was such an incredible conversation. And that has happened to me so many times where I've thought, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I'm too tired or whatever it is. And I think I'll just say good morning just to be polite. It's just that openness. We start with eye contact, and then we think, oh, this is a really interesting person, and just to give them a moment. And I think that's something that we can give people. Often when people are, reading my book or doing connected confidence workshops to further their career or their business, then they're going in with their agenda. But if our agenda can be service, if we can just want to put a smile on someone's face, if that's your goal for the day, then you can let go of those agendas. But then it often turns into something extraordinary for you and the other person.
I sort of wonder
if it is just a lovely moment for them. Well, that's great. We still get the joy of giving. but we don't know what else.
Yeah, I think we get the joy of receiving too. I'm often amazed by ad hoc conversations that I have with people.
Yeah.
And if you really, and I'm a big people person, I'm very social, and I celebrate uniqueness. It's one of the things that I absolutely adore. And, you know, even in the quietest of places, even in the most modest of people, and I think you said this in your book as well, everybody has a story.
Yes.
And, you know, we're at a time now where we need to be more uplifting about what we're doing. Yes, we have the basic struggles of everyday life and paying the bills and raising the children and paying the mortgage, what have you. But the reality is that those conversations, if you allow them in, can actually enrich your life. And I think that's what your book is actually saying. One of the things, Kerrie, that's kind of struck me when we're in networking sessions in particular, you're out, I personally can't, I've got to say it. Networking for me is often, it's not been a great experience. And I've found for myself personally, when I go, a lot of people want to spend time with me and tell me that they're having issues or they're having, you know, problems with their careers, or you see the people who are looking over your shoulder because you're not really the one they want to talk to. They want to go on somewhere else. I've had a bit of a combination. Then every now and again, I'm pleasantly surprised, I suppose. I should be a bit more generous than that. But it's interesting to me. We've all been stuck with, and I know you were on with Lindsay last month in February, Lindsay Adams, and Lindsay is a relationship guy. And some people slaughter a story and they just, you know, the time you're with them, it can be one of those that you really do need to move on. What about, I suppose, minimizing awkward moments or getting yourself out of situations where you are talking to people, but really you probably need to keep moving? How do you manage that and do it diplomatically and sensitively?
Yes. So I love that you've asked that, because there's two parts to that for me. So awkwardness, awkward conversations, that fear of the awkward is what inhibits people from connecting in the first place. People say like, oh, I don't want it to be awkward. And so we avoid it. So I have been over the past few years doing a hashtag be okay with awkward, because if we can just be okay with an awkward moment and just laugh it off or just say, wow, this is awkward, I just wanted to ask this, or, you know, so don't fear awkward. On the other side of that can be something amazing. However, the other situation, or, you know, what could be part of that is a conversation that you really want to get out of. And in the book that you're reading at the moment, it says how to get rid of people in a respectful way. And in the sequel, the travel toolkit, I called it polite exits, because people will fear talking to a person sitting next to them on a plane or somewhere, and they don't want to start a conversation because what if they get stuck? How do they get out? But we can extract ourselves from a conversation. And the best way to do this is by thanking the person, acknowledge them, like look them in the eye and say, thank you so much for sharing. I really need to, you know, whether it's go get a drink, you know, complete reading your book if you're sitting next to them. You know, I need to focus on some things, but thank you so much for sharing. I hope that you, you know, I wish you all the best with that, whatever is relevant for that situation. But if you just try and awkwardly like steer yourself away, they feel it. And if they are trying to connect, they can often sort of chase you and you're like, stop it, go away. So just by acknowledging and sharing a moment of gratitude, it closes the door gently and they feel acknowledged. And I think sometimes people just need to feel seen. So that's a graceful exit.
I think it's kind of, I remember getting on the train one day on the way in London, and I was, Kevin, if you're listening, Kevin and Joan, and Kevin was always Financial Times, and God forbid you would talk to Kevin at the Financial Times. If he wanted to talk, it was okay, but if you wanted to talk, it wasn't happening. Yeah. And I used to have the Daily Mail and he used to have the Financial Times, and we would sit very pleasantly beside each other. And we both said, it's okay. I'm tired. You're tired. Let's just get stuck into whatever we want to read. And we were just, it was just friendship, but it was acknowledgement and it was honest, you know?
Yes.
One of the things, I guess, that's really hard, I think a lot of people go out and they think they have to put up a particular image.
Yeah.
And it's your professional image versus the personal you. And I'm wondering, is there a balance, a good, you know, you're saying be authentic no matter what. But like self-leaders, and for example, I was talking to Sally Foley-Lewis a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about your poise and your sort of almost like measure. And, you know, people are almost drawn to self-leaders, but self-leaders are quite contained people. And you were saying that if you're too contained, that stifles creativity and expression. I don't know what the right way to present is when you're talking to people, because you still have to be yourself.
Absolutely. And I think we can get a bit stuck by just having a different understanding of what people mean by, containing yourself. And I did find that I was so contained because, I think I was trying to fit everybody else's expectations. But when we talk about being yourself, and I think sometimes people think that being authentic is like, if you're tired, just tell everyone you're tired. If you're, upset about something, tell everybody. And it's like, no, you can you can maybe say, you've had better days, but choosing to focus on the positive, choosing to, like, if I am having a conversation with you, honoring you and the time that we have, rather than bringing all my baggage, I can just go, you know what, I can deal with that later. And I would recommend that you do deal with it later. But choose to serve the other person in the conversation. And really, we love a conversation that is moving forward, that is uplifting. And sometimes conversations do start with like, wow, you look tired, or, oh, I'm so tired. But that doesn't go anywhere. So we need to be aware of the energy that we bring to a conversation, the focus that we bring. And so I'm not sure if you've seen the page yet. It's got the little emojis at the bottom. There's the frowning face, the neutral expression, and the smiling face. If we can steer our conversation that way, that lifts people up, it lifts us up too.
I think you say in your book, and you put it so well, it's energy and enthusiasm. At the end of the day, if you bring your positivity, if you bring your enthusiasm and your energy, and, so long as your energy is in tempo with whoever it is that you're speaking to, whatever group you're speaking to, that's definitely going to leave a positive mark. Yes. Whereas, if you're looking at suspicion or being a bit isolated and grumpy looking, at the end of the day, whatever you reflect is going to come back to you. Relatability. I'm thinking particular interviews, and you were talking about relatability being such a big factor in building connection, finding ways to relate to people at their level, not your level, their level. Yes. And interviews in particular are people's worst nightmare. And, that's why so much coaching goes on, that people can actually be prepared and confident for those interviews. What tips would you give people in terms of their relatability, in particular for interviews and job applications and those sort of things?
Wow. So I started thinking then about how we relate to others. And I think when we're open, authentic, and curious, we can ask questions rather than, I guess you're the expert with interviews more than me, but I think we don't have to just be the one being asked questions. We can say, how's your experience with that been? Like, just be curious and ask questions, because if we ask people what their experience is, or what is it like to be in this role? What is it like to be them right now? Then we can learn to relate to them. We can discover more about them and their perspective. And that also makes us more relatable because we express interest in them. We care. Sometimes we have to choose to express interest in others. We have to choose to be interested. So again, it comes back to that awareness, the conversation in your head, and shifting it to, I think we can relate on little things, but if it's little positive things, then it's the tiny things that connect us, and it's often invisible things. So that's why it's so important to be aware of our energy.
Yeah, and I think, that relatability factor too, if you go into a room, and this is coming back to your energy, absolutely, and those little small things that you're talking about, those small things are very much around, I don't know, somebody could have children your age, an interviewer. Yes. Yeah. It could be that your kids play the same sport. It could be, I always think Kevin Ryan, you'll know Kevin Ryan as well from the Speakers Association, Professional Speakers Association. Kevin was on a couple of weeks ago, and he's a cracker. He used to sit on panels for executive interviews, and he says, what's wrong with a bit of humor? Yeah. Sometimes you just need to lighten up a bit. The relatability factor comes back to you being authentic and comfortable in your own skin at interview. And I know it's an awkward situation. Yeah. But all of those things and little steps, you don't have to go gung-ho and try to come out with some big grandiose statement. I think that's what you're really saying, isn't it, Kerrie?
Yes. And this is something I was thinking about earlier this morning, if we're going for a job that we feel aligned to, if it's a company that we feel aligned to, it's so much easier to be ourselves. But if we are just wanting anything, then that's where we want to put on the front, and we find it hard to be relatable or to relate to people because we're faking it. So it comes back again to that self-awareness and what are your strengths and what do you love engaging with and what kind of people do you love engaging with? Because that's where you come alive when you're talking about what lights you up and what lights the other people up too.
And, you know, the other thing there for anybody listening in, people who sit on panels or people who interview you, they're probably as uncomfortable about being in the decision chair as you are, in the chair that has to sort of, you know, present yourself. But at the end of the day, people are just people at the end of the day. And in the relatability factor and the attitude factor and the optimism factor and all those little things, you know, if you can just sort of sit in your seat and be you, it's amazing. You know, you don't need to answer all the questions as well as you think you need to. You just have to be very likable and very connectable with.
Yes, it's like there's ticking boxes, but then there's this invisible sense of clicking into place, like a jigsaw puzzle piece.
Oh, look, I say to people all the time, I said, look, you were picked at the post because, you know, nothing wrong with what you said, nothing wrong with your skills, nothing wrong with your capability. But they just connected more with the other person. And, you know, and by the way, I should say, because I'm very much about integrity in these things and feedback to help people. If there was something in terms of the makeup or the construction of the interview or the responses, then I would obviously be dealing with those as well. Kerrie, we have come to the end of this little show. And can I say, what a comfortable, easy journey of conversation with you. I can't thank you enough. You're not even at home today. And you've got yourself kitted out to be on the show. And for that, me and everybody listening in and who will be listening into this podcast in the future, we're very grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Roisin. Yes, I've just come from the beach. It's amazing.
Well, and I think we probably replay this work-life balance piece too, because I think you're certainly somebody who's taken a frenetic life and you've introduced moderation into your life. Definitely. And I think that's definitely something that I'd probably be touching base with you on for myself. To everybody else who's tuning in, Kerrie's book is Do Talk to Strangers, How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere. And we'll be putting that up so you can see anyway. And obviously, as she said, she's got a number of other books as well, and she's co-authored a range of books. And one of the quotes that I took out of her book, which I think is really interesting, and this is what she says, and I think people should really take stock of this statement, and it's a quote by A.A. Milne. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And I think my takeouts from reading Kerrie's book and having conversation with her is acknowledge self when you take the small steps outside your comfort zone to connect with others, because those small steps will lead you, as Kerrie said, to the big ones. Look for opportunities to serve others. You never know where it will lead. It's all those little gestures. You know, those little gestures come back tenfold to you.
Yeah.
And the final thing is make someone's day when you acknowledge someone else. Really acknowledge them. Look them in the eye. Give them a moment. Give them time. You value them. And so on that note, I'm going to be taking a little break for a couple of weeks on the Living Your Career show. To be perfectly honest, as I said to Kerrie, 2 shows a week, and I feel like I'm absolutely exhausted. But to all the job seekers out there and the career seekers, there's a lot more coming your way. So watch the space for the Living Your Career show and the Living Your Career program, which is imminent. On that note, I'm going to wish you all farewell. Kerrie, thank you so much. Kerrie Phipps, everybody, wonderful to have you today.
Thank you, Roisin, and you make a bigger difference than you know. I know that all of your listeners will so appreciate the effort that you've put in over all of these weeks. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. I think Sally Foley-Lewis always says it so well. I appreciate you, Kerrie Phipps, just so you know. That's what Sally says as well. I appreciate you. And you know, when I saw it in her notes, I said to myself, gosh, Roisin. And she, again, you'll know Sally, she was on a couple of weeks ago. And it was one of those things I thought that is about, you know, connect with confidence. Or confidently connect and appreciating people. I think that's something for us all to take on board. On that note, goodbye, everybody, and we'll be back again soon. Take care for now. All the best.